Hi, welcome to this month's webinar on digital transformation. This is the third webinar in a series that we've been doing. We started in January, we took a break in March for obvious reasons, and have started back up here in April. I'm with my book co-author, Patty, and you can see a little bit about Patty on this slide. I think you're familiar with him already. He's been my guest previously. And more than just being a guest and a co-author and an excellent resource for digital transformation, and he also written books and podcasts and things like that. He's a great friend. And I also got to hear part of Patty's other passion in music when he started doing outdoor concerts at a social distance in his neighborhood. So I thought that was pretty cool thing that Patty is doing for his neighbors during this time of social isolation. So thank you, Patty, for joining me today.
Thank you, Ed, and thanks for the call out for what I call the social distance string project,
Yes.
which I do on my driveways when the weather is good up here in Chicago. But thank you for that mention, and I'm delighted to be here and to be a part of this conversation with you.
So since it's been a couple months since we last were together, we thought we'd do a really quick review of the definition of digital. If you recall, and certainly all these, if you weren't able to participate previously, you can go back in the archives and find all these and listen to them. Certainly you recall the net of defining digital is the fact that there is no definition. Everyone comes up with their own that works for them, and that's fine as long as everyone in your ecosystem has an agreement on what that definition is. That's really where you need to be. But we did go ahead and share with you our definition from our book. So you'll see our book comes out later this summer. We've added in weave throughout the book some about the pandemic, not COVID specifically, but we believe pandemics are a mainstay, and so you'll see some of that weaved into our book, but we're very excited about that coming out. But in the book, we define it. I won't read words to you. You see the definition there. And then Patty and I each came up with our own personal definitions, so you see those there. So when we talk about digital, if we use the one out of the book, you can read it right there. So when we go into this now and talk about digital transformation model, you'll kind of have a sense of what we're talking about. This is live on purpose, and the reason we do it live is, one, it's actually kind of fun for us because you're live, there's no going back, it's raw, it's unplugged, it's unfiltered, and sometimes that's best than being rehearsed. And the other main reason is that we want this to be interactive. So sure enough, at all of our webinars that we've done live, there's been a lot of audience interaction. So you know how to do this. You can enter in questions, and we'll try to answer as many as possible. And we're happy to go off script in terms of what we're planning to cover. If the questions take us there, we'll go there, because this is really meant for you. It's not anything that we're not doing it for ourselves to look at ourselves on screen. So we've promised since January that we would share with you a model for healthcare digital transformation. Just like the definition, there's no perfect model. There's not one single model. It's really whatever works best for you. That said, when we asked around, and you know the background, but just for those of you who are new, Patty and I together and independently have interviewed hundreds of CIOs, CEOs. No one had a model. So together we developed a model, and then it was further enhanced by many of my colleagues. And the cool thing about this model is some of the uniqueness. And one is it was designed by people from inside and outside of healthcare. And I make that distinction very clearly and purposefully. If we stick to ourselves, what we know in healthcare, we would continue to lag. But because we are all reaching out, and I love the trend where we're hiring CIOs, CDOs from outside of healthcare to come into healthcare, I think it's so beneficial for our industry. And so that's what we did with the model as well. In fact, you'll find that this model can be used in really any industry, with the exception of the last of the 10 platforms we'll talk about which is virtual care. So the model is our gift to you, and you can download it. We'll make sure there's a capability of downloading it, and then just reuse it what works best for your organization. So we have 10 platforms. Maybe you get rid of 6 because they don't apply and you focus on 4, or maybe some of the ideas as you double click into each platform, maybe some of the ideas there you change to fit your organization. So there's no pride of ownership here. So we just we developed this, and my colleagues at Tech Mahindra, and it's for you. It's for you, and the benefit is that if we could all get our arms around digital transformation and we do it in our respective areas, then we're going to save lives. Now, there's obviously a business benefit to digital transformation, but I think most of us are in healthcare for one reason, because we want to help save lives. So that's really what it's all about. So in 25 minutes, we're going to cover an overview, and it's only meant to be an overview. But again, if you ask a specific question, we'll try to dive deep into that question. So we're going to start with each platform. We're just going to go in order. And from there, we'll give maybe one example of something that you see on the double click and move on. So that's really how we're going to do it. And Patty and I will sort of trade examples. The other thing before we hit into culture, which I just did, is the importance of what you see in the middle. And it's the experience. So we believe digital transformation is not a technology thing, it's an experience thing. And furthermore, we believe that it's human-centered design. In fact, when we met last time in February, we spent the entire webinar specifically on design. We covered physical design and digital design. And so we may spend a little bit less time on that for examples today, because we spent an entire webinar just on that aspect, because it's all about the experience. It's all about human-centered design. And one last thing, it'll save us time at the end, actually, if I hit it now. There's a slide at the end, which we won't go to. But when it talks about experience, there's personas. And a lot of times people think of 1, 2, maybe 3 personas. We actually have 7 for you to consider. And you might have 8 or 9, or you may say, Ed, and Patty, it's fine that there's 7, but for us, it's only 4. That's cool. But I want to make sure that we cover that really quick. The first is patient. Obviously, the patient persona, their experience. When I say persona, I'm talking about their experience. There's the clinician. So it could be any type of clinician, a med tech experience, the nurse, the physician, anyone in that chain. Then there's the caregiver experience. Think about this, especially with COVID. Family is sort of obvious, but what about friends? And what about people who don't have a legal relationship, but definitely a moral relationship? And how do we treat them in their experience? And how do we lever technology to enable a better experience for them, not just the patient? More important than ever with COVID. Another one is organization experience. So what are you doing to digitally transform the organization? And there's tons of examples here, but that is a persona you have to consider. Then is the community. So what's the community benefit? Obviously, all of us in healthcare, we always, specifically in our hospitals and health systems, have a community benefit. How do we increase the experience for the community? Because we all know we don't want the community, we want to be a resource to the community. We only want them to use us when they have to. So what can we do to keep them from having to use us? And then there's partnerships. So you'll have other partnerships in your hospital health system with, maybe it's a vendor, a key vendor, supplier, and you want to make sure the experience is good there. And for some of you, it's brand. So in some cases, the hospital may just be local and the brand's not as significant, but for other hospitals, they have a regional brand, a state brand, a national brand, a global brand. So how do you make sure you have a great experience there? So when I say the experience, and Patty and I talk about that, and human-centered design, it's all those personas I just mentioned. So let's jump right in. So we're gonna hit culture. So culture being our first. So Patty, you wanna just pick one of those items and maybe talk about that, and then we'll move on to automation.
Yeah, so let me pick something like training, right? And I want to kind of focus on what's going on today. As as everybody knows, healthcare has gone virtually overnight. In fact, actually overnight. And so what that has meant for a lot of health systems is to train their physicians in virtual care models. And we all know that telehealth was coming along, especially synchronous care through virtual visits and so on and so forth. But it wasn't happening as fast as some of us may have hoped. But all of a sudden, it was forced on everybody. But just because you have a telehealth platform doesn't mean you're ready to deliver care. So the training becomes very important, because now there's this whole new method or medium through which you're interacting with your patients. And so everything about the doctor-patient interaction in terms of the empathy, the bedside manner, and everything else, all of it, it doesn't go away. You still have to practice it. You still have to make patients feel comfortable, even though they're in a virtual model. So the training of physicians to deliver care in a virtual model has become an important component of experience design. So that's just one thing that I thought I'd mention, because we've seen that with my work with clients, that this is a challenge that they've had to address.
Yeah, in fact, I think training, I don't think we're going to see the same type of training. And the training in the past has been very hands-on, literally at the elbow, very time intensive. Those days are over. We're not going back. There'll be some that slip back, but you're right, Patty. It's required a whole new way of thinking and doing. And I think we're going to start to become more open to the adoption of those sorts of capabilities. And we're going to virtualize training from this point forward. We already saw it happening, but to your point, I've been saying we accelerated healthcare by 3 years in a matter of 3 weeks, which is a good thing. So that was an excellent example. Thank you. Let's move to automation. And so again, you may have better examples out there, not examples, but better areas for you that work better for you when you talk about automation. These are just a couple of automation capabilities that we think about and we address in the book. So if you pick one, I think about robotic process automation, and this is a capability that a lot of people have been talking about. A few people are doing it, and a really good example, sort of the low-hanging fruit that we're seeing out there and have experienced with, is really the back end business office functionality. Some organizations, again, it depends on size, but it's all material depending on, because it's all scales, but the ratios are about the same, where we have a lot of people working back end office type of activities, very labor intensive, when I would say 80% of that can be automated. In fact, there's some great examples of organizations. I think of NYP comes to mind, where they've done that. And I think we're going to see a further acceleration of that, because I think the other thing, this is not about COVID, but certainly COVID has brought more attention now to the need to take out costs in our healthcare systems. And so digital was ready. We're ripe to do it. This is just one particular area. So again, we could talk AI and ML, all those other things, but because of time, we're just going to keep moving down the platforms to give you a sense of different aspects of that. So applications, Patty, you want to take one?
So let's look at this. Let's take something like application rationalization today, right? And we know that in a typical health system, there are literally hundreds, if not thousands, of applications that sit side by side in working together to deliver the kind of optimal experience that we look for patient interaction, or even for enabling caregivers. Very often, these applications, very often you find that there is, let's say, more than one application doing the same thing. Let's take a simple example. Let's say you're an integrated health system which also has a health plan, and you've got two logins, right? You could be a member in the health plan, and you could be a patient in the health system. Now you have two different ways of entering the ecosystem, and you would like to have it as one. So there's an opportunity there for you to rationalize your applications in a way that improves the experience, because now if you're a health plan member and you're logging in with credentials for the health system, you're going to get kicked out, and vice versa if you're trying to get into the health system with the member logins. So if you can rationalize that into one, as an example, you're improving the experience, plus you're saving costs. So that's one very small example of how you could use rationalization to improve the experience.
Yeah, and I think with a lot of these examples, again, this wasn't really about COVID, but certainly top of mind for everyone. In the past, just like with other parts of digital transformation, the telehealth being the more perfect example, we've seen little traction because it's too much change. People didn't want to do it. There was no catalyst to doing it. And it's the same with App Rat. Like everyone knew about it, and I've actually done it and experienced the benefit of it. But a lot of people, they were like, they didn't want to go through the political hassle of making it happen. Well, that's all taken care of now. I think people understand the risk that it posed already, but now you can use a financial lever. Like, look, we need to take significant costs out, and App Rat is one way of doing it. Certainly with digital transformation, infrastructure always plays big. That's always sort of the obvious thing. That's where most tech people go first. I prefer all the virtual care and experience type things, but infrastructure not to be overlooked. Certainly another hot area that's coming out that's really truly digital capable is workplace as a service. And so again, have experience from this from prior life, but also something that I've seen done in my new role as Chief Digital Officer with HCI Group Tech Mahindra is doing this at scale for 50,000 plus users. And it is pretty interesting. What I've seen is this is another way to take out costs, but it's not really a cost play. I think it's an experience play. So certainly with costs, you can better rationalize, the logistics, the supply chain, and definitely the licensing, and pull out about 30%. But from experience point of view, much better experience, because it's a hassle. You get onboarded, you started as a new employee, you get onboarded, and they might have to ship something to you, or if you go to a traditional office, it takes days and getting your login. But now it's like this all just happens. It's all cloud-based. And again, what I love about that example, Patty, not only does it pull out costs, which is important, but it enhances the experience. So whenever you can get 2 or more clear benefits like that, those are areas that I would focus on. A question that came through was, what do I focus on first? Wow, there's so many different things. I would focus on those things that where you can get at least 2 wins out of, and this is one of them, where the win is from experience, much better experience, and you take out costs. So you get little resistance within your organization.
Can I jump in and make one quick comment here? You mentioned infrastructure. I think some of those aspects may not seem like experience-related item. The one on top, right there, interoperability, the API and microservices architecture. These are great accelerators for you to speed up your development cycles, to unlock data from multiple sources of truth, if you will, within the ecosystem. Unless you have a really robust API and microservices architecture, you're really not going to be able to create the kind of experiences that leverage the data from multiple sources. Of course, you need to have a robust data management infrastructure in the background. These may not seem like digital, or these may not seem like experience-related things, but they're just as important in enabling the kind of experiences you want to create going forward.
Yeah, I agree with you. Patty, I know your passion, one of your many passions is around analytics. In fact, you wrote a book on it called The Big Unlock.
Yeah.
So you want to pick one of these things, analytics in terms of digital transformation?
Yeah, I think analytics, data and analytics is going to be possibly the most important differentiator for health systems as you migrate towards the healthcare delivery model of the future. So I already talked a little bit in my previous comment about how you use API and microservices architecture to unlock the data, but that's only one part of the story. You have to have a really robust data management environment. So there's a lot of engineering involved in doing that, determining your sources of truth and how you really create an infrastructure that allows you to tap into multiple data sources, but then aggregate it in ways that allow you to create new kinds of experiences. And last but not least, improve those experiences by layering on advanced analytics tools such as AI and machine learning that can help you to respond to patient or consumer needs on a real-time basis. So all of this comes together to really create the human-centered design of tomorrow. There's a lot of these components under the covers, but data and analytics increasingly is going to power the experience of the future. And we've been seeing data sources increasing. over the last few years. They will continue to increase. And we're also seeing at the same time an advancement in the type of technologies available to you now to unlock the insights from the data. So I think this is absolutely critical for health systems that are looking to differentiate themselves in future.
Agree. You know, one of the fun things about my role is I get to speak to healthcare systems around the world now. Is quite interesting. And you're right. This is one of the biggest things is, oh my gosh, we're awash in data. How do we make it actionable? How do we do precision medicine? Everything. How do we do research? Very, very ripe area for digital transformation with analytics. You know, and then strategy. You know, again, just so many things we could pick on, and we're down to 10 minutes, and we've got a couple questions that I do want to address. So thank you for your questions. If you have any more, please send them in. We will try to address all of them. I'm going to try and save the last 5 minutes. So Patty, our challenge is to do the next 5 in 5 minutes. Strategies is have a strategy. Again, there's no good or bad strategy necessarily. Well, I'll take that back. Let's strike that one. There can be a bad strategy, but the important thing is work with your stakeholders, collaborate, develop a strategy so that the strategy just helps your organization focus. Otherwise, you'll be helter-skelter. So again, you could just look at the model here and say, oh my gosh, you know, what do I do? But if you have a strategy that you develop with your peers and collaborate well, that's really important. So I would definitely have that. I think some of you know that, you know, it's good sometimes too to have a visionary type statement with that strategy, but you really need to develop a strategy that is, the reason I say collaborate with your peers, it's got to be owned by the organization. It cannot be an IT strategy. I don't believe in those. It's really got to be holistic. So maybe you won't lead it, but you should be part of the leadership that leads that strategy. Very key. So for success. Product development, I'm going to just hit this one in 10 seconds because not many organizations are set to do this or want to do this. But certainly that is something that some do. Some are very entrepreneurial, have big innovation labs like an Intermountain or a Cleveland Clinic or Mayo Clinic, Johns Hopkins, and maybe make product as well. And you're seeing some of that actually because of COVID. You're seeing a lot of great work by healthcare organizations actually producing product. And that goes back to diversifying your revenue streams, which again, very important in the COVID world. So physical design, I'm going to skip over. Because again, we covered physical design and digital design quite extensively in the past, in the last webinar. So if that's something of keen interest, please go back and listen to that. So let's camp on virtual care for 2 minutes, Patty, and then we're going to answer. I've got a slew of questions we're going to answer. So go ahead and take one of these.
I'll just make one comment here. I think today, right now, the priority for the here and now is really to virtualize care delivery models. There's no two ways about it. And a lot of health systems that I talk to, they're finding themselves in a place where they were making some progress prior to the COVID-19 pandemic, but all of a sudden now they're finding themselves in a place where they need to have a roadmap and they need to have a pathway to executing on the roadmap very, very quickly. So my only comment here would be that, you know, virtual care is the strategy for today, but how you execute on the strategy and what is right for your organization is something that you need to figure out for yourself. Invest a little bit of time to figure out your own roadmap, which is unique to your situation, and take advantage of all the tools and technologies that are out there from third parties, you know, like startups and so on, but also your existing vendors. The EHR vendors are also making you know, significant investments in this space. And last but not least, even the federal government is putting money into this by way of this $200 million program for the FCC that's going to fund telehealth initiatives. So my recommendation would be take advantage of all of this because it's here, it's available. Build your own roadmap and go execute.
Yeah, great point. I call it catch the rebound. So obviously everyone's doing, and I'm so proud. I've said this in other modalities, but I'm so proud of all of you that are listening, participating in this webinar for the work that you've done on the front lines, helping the clinicians right next to them. I've been so impressed. It's, you know, there's no words to express how grateful I am as a consumer for all your heroic work. Catch that rebound, like Patty was saying. You know, we've done a lot sort of MacGyver type of actions, some duct tape actions, which are great because they're saving lives. As we catch the rebound, as the country, as the world heals from this, make sure you've got a really good plan. Like what you were saying, Patty, I just want to emphasize that, to where you're not having to go back again a second or third time. So really think this one through. Do it now. What I always did in times of crisis, I always started up and I always spun up a second team. And the second team, so the first team was working on the problem at hand. The second team, to the extent that there's time, but I encourage you to make the time. Start thinking, okay, what is that virtual care platform for us in the future? Are you going to cobble a bunch of things together, or are you going to look enterprise and get the benefits of the enterprise like you might have on the EHR in the past, as an example? So whatever it is for you all, really spend some time on that. So with that, let's hit a couple questions. And again, I said it before, I'll say it again. This is just a model. We went through it really quick. It'll be available to you for download. Take it, change it, make it fit your organization. Maybe gives you some ideas. Maybe you don't use it, but you use it as a brainstorming tool. We're just here to serve, and however it works for you, super. If you do end up using it and you get some benefit out of it, would love to know about it, just so it would inform maybe if we're writing a second book. All right, so let me hit some questions. We got some time. So one is a good one. Why is healthcare lagging behind, although we've had massive expenditures taking place in IT? So Patty, I'm gonna throw that one to you, and I'll take the next one that comes in. Well, we got like this.
Well, healthcare has never had a good reason to invest in this kind of virtual care models or experience design. There wasn't a reason for it, and there wasn't a sufficient financial incentive to do that. But now there is, because firstly, you know, virtual care visits are now going to be compensated at the same rates, pretty much, as in-person visits. So the financial disincentive goes away. But more importantly, for the longer term, healthcare is now in a consumer business, right? You know, for all intents and purposes. And so to look at the business from the point of view of consumerized healthcare economy is very important, and therefore, you know, all the strategy and everything has to drive towards that goal. And we are being, in many ways, accelerated into that future in a very, very short time because of what's going on right now. But it's an opportunity, is how I'd put it.
Yeah, I think it's an opportunity to leapfrog, and that's where really I'm hoping. And it kind of goes in with a question/comment from someone else about, hey, we're still behind. How do we? So Patty, how do we work with vendors, work with entrepreneurs to really catch up, like with solid technology?
Yeah. You know, it's interesting you ask that, because right now we are deeply engaged with a very large health system where we're addressing exactly this question. You know, you're going to have to make a lot of vendor choices. You're going to have to make choices between existing vendors and new vendors, and you're going to have to make choices between a range of new vendors that can deliver things to you. For all of that, you know, you need to have a structured approach to it. Make sure that you understand what you need first and foremost before you start looking at technology. Very often we find that, you know, you get a little bit ahead of yourself and you go out and find a nice cool tool out there that you want to buy, but then you don't know what you really need, and then you buy it, and then you're struggling to kind of retrofit all of your capability needs. So go about it in a structured way. Take a little bit more time upfront in defining your requirements very carefully. Then look for the technology tool, and you'll find yourself better off at the back end of the process.
Yeah, that's why I was talking a little bit, emphasizing a little bit of strategy. There's not a lot of time for a huge amount of strategy, but spend some time, the enterprise architecture, and partner with someone who has the vision and the platform or the capability to enable or create a platform. Do not rely on old technology and old thinking. That would be my thing. It's like, no, we can't do that anymore. And that goes to our last question, because we're like 45 seconds away. And that is, and this is a common one, this is a really practical question. Okay, well, what do you do about people who don't want workstation as a service or anything? And I run into this all the time. because they might lose their jobs, right? So we're talking about maybe sourcing or robotic process automation, things that lose people's jobs. Like, how do you handle it? You're a CIO, it's like, or the organization. Like, I know, and I can't name the customer, but I have a customer who tremendous success with RPA. I say customer, friend, and they can't do anymore because the implications of releasing jobs. So how do you confront that? And I've had to do it in the past because of my, where we were in my particular health systems. How do you confront that?
I think the answers are not very straightforward, but I think at a very broad level, I would say that these technology changes, whether it's automation, whether it's advanced analytics, virtualization of care, and so on and so forth, would create new opportunities for people who are willing to be open-minded about it, retrain themselves, and for organizations who invest in retaining their people. Because at the end of the day, healthcare is still a very personal business, and technology is not going to take away the personal aspect of healthcare. How you deploy it, how you use it to move towards the future is what's going to make the difference. There may be some roles that get impacted, but in the aggregate, I think there'll be a lot of new opportunities that emerge from it.
Yeah, Patty, you're right on. And that's the message for anyone. You have to continue to reinvent yourself. So if people aren't willing to do it, they're going to be the fear mongers. Then I'm sorry, but we're not social organizations. I know this is going to sound kind of harsh, but we're not social organizations. And you give people an opportunity for retrain. But if they don't want to, if they need to go to an organization that's going to stay in the past. That's always been my message, done in a very compassionate way. We're going to help you. We'll help you retrain. This is the future. Learn new skills. But if you're not willing to, there's nothing we can do but help you find another job. Thank you, Patty. Awesome as usual. Thank you, audience. The next seminar we have coming up, next webinar is live with Dr. Ram Raju. He's one of my former bosses, New York City Health and Hospitals. Now he's at Northwell. You'll find him fascinating, a great leader. Hope to see you there. Thank you, everyone. And get in contact with Patty and I in any way that's best for you. Thank you so much.
Be safe, stay safe. Thank you all.